Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Indiana State University Athletic Director Sherard Clinkscales. Sherard, thank you for being on the podcast. You're my first repeated guest, so that's the first of the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast.
Outstanding. I'm glad to have that honor.
Well, I want to start with what if anyone's watching the video of this, they can see the new logo. So in March 2020, the Sycamores announced a new logo, and I think it would be very helpful to start our conversation with a task that current and future athletic directors may face when it comes to modernizing their logo or a completely different logo. So why was it important for you all to replace the existing logo with a more modern look? And then what were the problem areas with the old one? And did the recent change to Under Armour kind of make that as an opportunity or make things more noticeable of why you needed to do a refresh logo?
Well, one of the things is that from a branding standpoint and from a marketing standpoint, the way that the logo was, it was hard to replicate. That cursive and that font, as well as the location of the star, it's all over the place. You go to one store, it looks like one thing, and you go someplace else, it looks like something else. So from a branding standpoint, one of the things you have to learn, you have to have consistency within your brand, and then you have to be able to replicate it. So that's one thing. The old logo, which is now, I call it more of our old style logo that we're still keeping, it had been really literally over 20 some odd years before it had to been changed. And I hate to say that to change just for the sake of change, but in this case, it was just necessary. The thing that I caution people that delve in this exercise is that no matter what happens, no matter how many people you include for their opinions, no one is ever happy about it. And that's the part I think that's probably was the biggest challenge, is that you have people that have known this logo for however long we've had it, and they just weren't going to be happy with any new logo. So I thought it was a need to be more crisp, more modern, to come up to speed with regards to where we are. I mean, even places like Arby's, McDonald's, everybody goes through some kind of refresh, and we were just long overdue for that.
Yeah, and I don't live very far away, so I was in Terre Haute, I think 2 or 3 months ago, and it's admittedly grown on me. And I think when I really drove by the track stadium and saw it mounted on the bricks, because the old logo used to be up there, and the new one just up there really just pops, and the block lettering and everything. So it actually grew on me a lot in a short matter of time. Are you feeling a sense of that people are coming around to it, that maybe early indications where they weren't that excited about it?
Well, I am. I see it now more in stores. There at Walmart here locally and at Meijer. And I believe what I've gathered, more people are starting to grow. When you see it on apparel, and when you see it, like you said, at the stadium, it really stands out more. When we launched it, you saw what was behind me. They're like, oh, it looks like a boot. Oh, it's this, it's that. And again, I'm not disrespecting people's opinions. They're certainly entitled to them. And I know some people will never embrace it, but I think it's something that definitely was needed, and it is crisp. And I think more people are growing to like it than they lead on to be.
What was interesting is shortly after ISU unveiled that new logo and the word art branding that went with it, was the Indianapolis Colts put out a new secondary logo, and it's very similar to the Indiana State's font and the crispness of the branding. So that part was kind of interesting to see as well. I think it was just weeks after you all did yours.
Right. Yeah. Indiana State has so much tradition, and I get it, and it's been around for a long time. But at some point in time, we have to move forward, just like with the whole shoe apparel deal, having a company come in like Under Armour to get us all homogenous. That's all a part of a modern day athletic department, and we hadn't gotten there yet. And I believe that we are definitely in that trajectory now.
Yeah, and any listener that's interested in hearing more about really a logo, or not, excuse me, a logo, but an apparel deal, Sherard and I talked on our last podcast last year about that Under Armour contract. So find that in the old episodes. What was the entire timeline like, and were there any sorts of nuances involved that individuals making future changes to the logo might want to consider? With the university, it's not just the athletic department. I'm not sure what kind of nuances did you maybe expect and you did see, or maybe you went through it and didn't expect it?
Well, I think the first one is this, the athletic department is just a part of the university. and that we're not autonomous. And I think that you have to be able to get buy-in, obviously, from your president, your board of trustees, and other stakeholders, the people in your foundation, alumni affairs. I mean, athletics plays such a big part of the university. And so before we endeavored in this, we had to get the feedback from a lot of those internal constituents. Then obviously it's the external people that you try to reach out to and try to get a sample of what they like and what they don't like. And again, that's a mixed bag, because a lot of people aren't going to like anything that you put out there. They don't want to change. But those are some of the nuances. I think one of the things too is that, how easy is it for it to be replicated, the cost of it, because obviously, like with baseball, we want to put that new logo on the hat, but it doesn't really fit on the hat. So where does it fit at? So how does it fit into your scheme on your uniforms and everything like that? So those are just a couple of things that are slight, but it's a labor of love, and you just have to be ready to have thick skin and be able to just to move forward and do what you think as the athletic director is best for the department moving forward.
Yeah, and so speaking of how it's part of the university, Indiana State also recently announced that the Collegiate Sports Associates is going to do an athletics program review for the university. It's an impressive group led by Todd Turner and Dr. Brad Bates. Why is now the time to do a comprehensive athletic review for ISU as an institution? And is it more important now because of COVID-19 for the university and athletic department to understand how to best move forward coexisting with COVID implications?
Well, Travis, it just happened to coincide with what's going on with the pandemic. President Kurtz and I talked about this last year about a study done on just evaluating our athletic department in regards to where we are when it comes to our peers in the conference and other institutions across the country. We have done, I believe, a really good job with the resources that we have being successful with our student athletes academically and competitively. And obviously our expectations are always high. We want to compete in the NCAA tournament, win Missouri Valley Conference championships. But there are other things that you need to support those. And so you want to make sure that you're matching expectations with resources. And that's just not financial resources. That's how you are organized within the university, how you're organized within the department, staffing and things like that. And a lot of people here, for lack of better, just don't understand how good we do with the resources that we do have. And so in one aspect, it helps us to, to celebrate how well we've done with the resources, but also for the people out there who think that they know what we don't have can say, hey, well, this is what we're going to need to be able to sustain competitiveness, sustain what we're doing academically. Because with COVID, as you're seeing, just not Power 5 schools, we're having to pivot and you really go back to basically ground root for philanthropy, sponsorships, and ticket revenue to be able to come up with the kind of money we need to support our department. So through this process, I'm hoping that we'll be able to educate all the people with regards to how we are existing, and then what it's going to take for us to not only to continue to elevate it, but to just to be able to maintain what we have.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on that with COVID related and finances. You all just announced in late September the Step Up initiative, and there's a splash page on the website and everything. And it really looks like it's to help offset the costs associated with COVID-19 and with the recently announced NCAA health and safety regulations, the cost that'll come with that. I assume what Indiana State is dealing with financially is comparable to similar FCS and public regional institutions. Some call them mid-majors in athletics. What steps and strategy has ISU had to take to get through the pandemic up to this point financially? Is there any sign of things getting easier as sports come back?
Well, basically, it comes down to testing. There's certain protocols the NCAA puts into play that in order for us just to be able to practice and have contact, that's required, and that's a substantial investment. And our university has done a tremendous job stepping up, if you will, to be able to support us. But that's a cost that's obviously not budgeted. And this campaign is a part of helping us bridge that delta that this has presented us. Obviously, with not having a basketball championship that the money that we get from the NCAA is not available, or it was not as much as it has been in the past. From a sponsorship standpoint, with regards to our community, businesses are being hit, so a lot of people aren't able to contribute at the same level. And then from a philanthropic standpoint, the same way. So, this thing is a perfect storm, this pandemic. And again, a lot of schools like us, and then other schools like the Purdue's and the Power Five schools are all having to say, okay, wait a minute now, we don't have that big revenue that we've had in the past. We've got to be able to gather resources to help offset the cost. So that's what the Step Up campaign is. There's not a number that I'm looking at to trying to get. We're just trying to do the best we can to offset the costs and take away the burden that I won't say the burden, but the investment that the universities put on us to try to ease that.
Yeah, and I've had other guests on that just say how expensive the testing is, but it's obviously extremely important to be able to offer the opportunities that you have for your student athletes, but it definitely comes at a financial hit. Well, kind of want to go back to the athletic program review, something that you actually all announced in 2019. So before the pandemic hit too, was facility upgrade renderings.
Mhm.
And this was pretty popular when it came out, I think, across the industry, because I haven't seen too many places take this route. But basically, you all mentioned plans about the Sycamores Sports District that was presented to the public and held an in-person opportunity to explain it, you and President Curtis, about what the vision of Sycamore athletics could be. And can you talk about what facility upgrades were involved, how or why the idea was proposed to actually use visual renderings of the different potential venues? And do you think that was the best way to showcase just the potential to the public, that they can actually see, knowing their local area, like, okay, we could have an on-campus football stadium and here's what it could look like, but as a way to kind of also garner support in the community?
One of the challenges when I accepted this job was that, for lack of a better word, we I don't want to say I had low self-esteem, but we don't aspire to be big. We've been successful, but we have to be able to build on that success. Like it or not, we are still known as the team of Larry Bird and Carl Nicks of '79, and our ability not to be able to leverage that to be able to build something like some peers like Creighton and other schools like St. Louis that have kind of taken their basketball success and grown it. We've had success in gymnastics. We've had success in women's basketball and football and baseball. And so we just haven't leveraged all those successes to be able to build something, I guess, to stay concurrent with how, I guess, things happen in the mid 90s, early 90s, as far as facilities. Our facilities are fine. The Holman Center renovation is going to be great, but we got to think big. And that's how and the facility district was my way to be able to say, you know what, we can think bigger. We need a basketball practice facility. Right now we use a South Gym, which is outstanding, but volleyball and men's women's basketball practice in there, and time and space is of the essence. It's hard to schedule. So to be able to have a basketball practice facility there in the district, to be able to finally know what it looks like to be able to have a football stadium on campus, what that looks like. So many football alums are like, okay, when are we going to get on Memorial Stadium? What can we do to make Memorial Stadium better? And so to be able to see what a renovated Memorial Stadium looks like, and then what that estimated cost might be. Because again, a lot of people speculate and make opinions about what should be done, but no one has ever sat down and said, okay, this is what this would look like for this to happen. For baseball, our baseball facility was upgraded some years ago, but there's still some things that we can do to make it even better. And then to bring softball across the street there and make that a complex where they share facilities and you have lounge areas. It's just really something that I think that's needed. And you have to think big and shoot for the top, and then wherever you land, at least you've gotten better than where you are. And then from a philanthropic standpoint, if I'm an investor and they say, Sherard, what does a football on campus stadium look like, and what is the cost of it? I want to be able to say, well, this is what we invested in. This is what it would look like. Now, obviously, this is the Rolls Royce, but we could certainly work it, to whatever. Now somebody has something to actually look at that's hard, that's been invested, and has a feel of what that looks like. So maybe a sponsor or a donor says, you know what, I'm interested in this. So it's aspirational, but I do believe that there's substance in that because one of the things out of that I really believe that we're going to need here over the next, I would say within the next 2 years, is a basketball practice facility. We're going to be the only school in the conference without a basketball practice facility, and we're going to need some people to be able to step up and help us put that into play. Basketball is our biggest revenue sport, and we got to take care of basketball. So anyway, it's aspirational, but I wanted people to see that we're thinking big here. We're always not thinking small.
Will that kind of roll into the athletic program review, those renderings and that strategy? Is that something that you envision making part of that and get their opinion on that strategy?
I think so because they're going to ask people, possibly about, what level of support is there for the different projects. So absolutely.
Well, I want to talk about shift gears to spring 2021 and football season. So, from late February to mid April, the Sycamores will now have an 8-game football season, along with almost the entirety of FCS football. And soon, hopefully, other fall sports will have their schedules adapted to spring as well. A couple of questions with this. Do you see the uniqueness of a spring football season overlapping with the end of college basketball, hopefully into Arch and March Madness for you all, and throughout most of your other spring sports like baseball and track and field, which are two very successful sports? Do you see that as an opportunity to amplify the athletics as a whole program to the public with a heavy dose of Sycamore sports?
Yeah, for sure. We're all looking forward to it. I looked on the Farmer's Almanac on what the weather is going to be like on February the 27th of the last 10 years when we play Southern Illinois in football, and it's anywhere between 27 degrees and 40 degrees. So, no, I think it's certainly a good chance to be able to showcase. I think there's a lot of anticipation here in the community to get things going. And I think our coaches and our student athletes are just anxious to get out there and be able to compete. Um, this pandemic has been tough mentally more than anything for a lot of us. I mean, we do this job because we're here to serve our student athletes and coaches. And so for them to be able to get going this January is going to be really, really exciting. And I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to be spending a lot of nights and afternoons there at the fields.
Yeah, and they can't just move all their games to Florida like baseball does in Midwest in February. So that'll be an interesting development. But on the flip side of that, what strains of having everything in the winter and spring are you maybe worried about from a resource or a workforce perspective? And are athletic directors having those types of conversations within the conference and within the athletic department of how you're all going to manage that? What's that look like?
Well, obviously, the conference has given us some direction with regards to scheduling, and they're working with us to make sure that we don't have as many conflicts and back-to-back things like with football and basketball. But ultimately, each campus is kind of doing their own thing. I mean, we're talking about it daily. Matter of fact, I've been meeting this afternoon about how we're going to do our practices come January, on facility usage. But we have a really, really good staff, and we're all got to take more than just one hat. Some of us will have 3 and 4 hats to be able to make this happen. We're going to have days where we're going to have volleyball in the afternoon and then basketball at night. We're going to have baseball doubleheader on Saturday and then a basketball game in the evening. So we're ready to embrace that. But I think from a facility standpoint, it's going to be challenging. From a broadcasting standpoint, it's going to be challenging. So that's where the conference gives us direction with regards to the coverages. But we'll make it through. We put some things in play. We'll have some temporary help us out. But we're going to be fine.
Has there been any talk yet, or is it too early to, with the spring, specifically with football, what does that do for the fall 2021 season? Has there been any talk about, can there still be a regular start date so that FCS can get those potential money guarantee games back on schedule? Or is the idea at the FCS level that football might have to start later in the fall to make up for playing so late into the spring?
Travis, that's a great question. I think that those are certainly things that have been pondered. I believe that right now, just to be able to get through a spring season is the focus, and then to see what comes out of that. I think both of those are plausible. I think ideally the coaches would like to be able to continue to keep things going and just have a regular fall. But I'm not at liberty to say it, and I know the discussions are to the point where we made a decision. I think the focus is just trying to get through the spring right now.
It's going to be interesting to see what college football looks like as a year-round sport, between some schools playing and some playing in the spring.
Well, it's a good opportunity for FCS to get, hopefully a lot of exposure with the FBS schools now deciding to play their seasons in the fall. It should provide an opportunity for FCS football to be able to take the forefront, obviously with basketball and everything. So we'll see, but I'm really excited, and I know the conference is as well.
Well, plus you get the benefit of learning a little bit from putting on events, even if you scale the size back, but you get to see
Right.
best practices of fall sports being played. And
Exactly.
I want to end it with talking about Missouri Valley Conference Commissioner Doug Elgin announced in September his intention to retire as commissioner after the 2021 academic year, a post he's held since 1988, which I think he's the longest running tenure commissioner in all of college sports. What has it been like working with the commissioner in your first 4 years now as an athletic director in the Missouri Valley Conference?
Well, I think if to harken back to the Missouri Valley Conference, I don't want to say heyday because it was a heyday before the heyday, but during my time, I mean, the Missouri Valley Conference was a two, maybe three-team bid league back in those days, and so he certainly was a part of that and building that brand to where we were looked at as one of the we still are looked at as one of the stronger mid-major schools. His leadership certainly has been put us in a position now where we have to be able to now see where we fit in as the landscape is changing. Obviously, the Power Five schools are making a play to take more spots in the NCAA tournament. You have the pandemic. You have conference realignment. And so, things have changed a lot since the late 80s and the mid 90s and everything like that. So his leadership has been really good. It's been consistent. It's always good to have someone that knows the history of the conference and kind of where it's been and where it's going. And I think it's a good time for him to pass that baton, if you will, moving forward. But I really respected his leadership and his guidance, and basically his mentorship with regards to kind of how things have been, and kind of how people look at, like, for Indiana State concern, how we can get better and what are the things that he's seen to be able to help us do that.
Yeah, and I forgot that you were a two-sport athlete at Purdue, right? So you've probably been around the MVC schools as a competitor back in your playing days, both sports.
Absolutely. I mean, baseball. I would argue that they were probably one of the best baseball conferences in the Midwest when I was at Purdue in the early to mid '90s. So no, the conference has had wonderful leadership, and we're going to miss Mr. Elgin, but again. We're looking forward to passing the baton and moving forward and finding even a stronger place here in college athletics.
Yeah, and it seems like there's been an uptick in retirements in higher ed and athletics at the end of the 2021 year, because maybe people do see coming that there's going to be a lot of changes, and it's not just a 1 year thing to get through or with coexist with COVID-19 and how it impacts higher ed and athletics. So on that, Sherard, I want to end it and just thank you for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, Travis. And I'll just say that a lot of things are happening, and I'm just thankful to have an opportunity to work in college athletics and just want to continue to serve our student athletes and coaches. That's our core responsibility, to educate those people, especially our student athletes, and go from there. So I appreciate what you're doing.